All right, it's now 17 minutes after 7. It's time for us to review the week that was and just look at what's been happening around. A quick reminder that you're welcome to participate in this segment, and you can do that on social media. The Twitter handles are going to be displayed as we carry on, and you're welcome to let us know what your thoughts are on some of the events that have taken place this week. Now, the panel that we have this morning, to my extreme left, we have Kevin Osido. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We also have Dr. Sam Kamau. Thank you for joining us this morning just to review the week. And for the last few days, of course, what has been making headlines is mainly the education sector, given that we have the KCSE results that were released, but several things coming out of that. Number one being that girls came out strong once again, which has been lauded from different quarters. But I think what is more worrying, and maybe we could start from there, is the fact that we have more than almost 60% of students not making it to campus. But there are all sorts of reasons coming out to explain why. Let me start with you, Dr. Kamau, especially because you're in the more of the education sector, as it were. On your feelings and thoughts, first of all, on what those results reflect, and possibly if, like Wilson Sosion says, there needs to be a recall.
Thank you, Mike. And I think one of the issues that is coming out first, I won't call it a fallacy, but we have overemphasized that the girls have outperformed boys, which if you look at the picture more closely is not necessarily the case. It's just that girls occupied many of the top positions.
Top 6 positions, I believe, were girls.
Exactly. But if you look at it actually across in terms of performance, boys have still had a very strong performance. In fact, the only score that girls have outperformed boys is actually the D score. But the number of A's, the number of B's, the number of C's, boys have actually outperformed girls. The only significant thing is that comparing to last year, there has been a marked improvement in the performance of girls, which is actually a good thing, because I think we are focused more on the boy child as underperformed, and I think it's almost twisting the narrative and giving the incomplete picture.
And I wonder whether, from a psychology point of view, it really helps in any way when we spend so much time comparing the boy and the girl.
Well, there is some value in the fact that looking at it previously, when girls were seen to be underperforming, of course, having focused on that and trying also to understand what were some of the challenges, it can help us. But I think this particular year, I have seen it's almost as skewed. I don't know whether it's analysis or overemphasis, trying to show that actually that boys are underperformed. I think what we should emphasize and celebrate more is that girls are also improving in terms of their performance. It doesn't necessarily mean that the boys have underperformed if you look at it across and in the right way. But on the second issue, of course, there is a concern that is emerging, because when you compare the results this year and especially last year and the previous years, we have seen, of course, performance seems to be going down. But I think there are a few issues that we may want to understand out of this. First, there are the concerns that are coming up right now in terms of the noise that is coming from, number one, the Kenya National Union of Teachers, Sosion, and also the former Prime Minister made a comment about this. And I think the problem with these comments, they don't tell us everything, because we are just questioning what we are calling mass failure in terms of exams. And part of the challenge, of course, is that we have valued exams so much and privileged them in terms of determining how we tend to move forward. But I think the important thing, and the ministry can help us in terms of this, first, we appreciate, of course, the efficiency of marking exams and trying to make sure that the results come out
within a very short time.
But then it should not be just efficiency for efficiency's sake. We also need to know, for example, what accounts for this change in performance. The only one that has been explained is that we have sealed the loopholes in terms of leakage, which is true, because if you compare last year but one, that was 2015. There was massive leakage and I think irregularities around the exams. So the reforms that were instituted in the exams management, that is at NEC from last year, have seem to have borne fruit. But beyond just saying that we have sealed the loopholes, and that is the only factor that accounts for the dipping performance, I think we need to ask a little bit more, because if you actually talk to not just the students, but if you talk to some of the teachers who are involved in marking the exams, was the exam a little bit too hard for the students? Or is it that previously students were always relying on the teachers would drill the students, and then they would also expect to get leakage, and therefore it would account for the performance we used to see? Or could it be, which is what Sosion is alluding to, that perhaps after marking and looking at the results, of course you have to look at data and say, what does this data tell us? Do we perhaps need to moderate so that to make sure, because actually, and I think Sosion was talking about that, when you talk about measurement and evaluation in exams, it's supposed to reflect a normal curve. Right. But these particular results we have seen this year and last year, it shows that the curve is skewed slightly, which means there are more people on the side of failing. And I think those are some of the questions. The ministry may actually help itself by coming out and explaining a little bit what accounts for this kind of performance.
All right, Kevin, your thoughts on that, and more so to do with the fact that we seem to put so much weight on results. And it is data, just like Daktari has said here. It is data, and it is important for us to have data. But do we also emphasize so much on the results to a point where, I mean, we even have a girl who committed suicide simply because she got a C?
Precisely, and thank you so much for this opportunity. These results, in my view, give us an opportunity to undertake a complete circuit audit, especially given the fact that we're also looking forward to the start of the new system of education. From the 844, now we are moving on to this proposed system. And why this, in my view, is important is to be able to look at where are we coming from and what is the impact that our education system is actually bringing out into the populace. And by that I mean the students, even as they move on to joining university. What are the opportunities that exist when students graduate? Because every year, like today, I think UON is graduating, and this week we've seen lots of universities graduating. By the end of the year, each year Kenya churns out more than 800,000 young people into what we call the job market. And the question that I believe we should be asking as a country is, so what? Because is it about churning out people and then ticking boxes of saying we have seen this X number of pupils coming from primary and this number joining secondary schools and this number joining universities? Because then if we begin to ask those questions, Michael, it will give us the opportunity also to look at how about those students who do not join university? What is their intake? And what is the uptake? And ultimately, how do we ensure that they also add value to the economic growth of this country? Because it will not make a lot of sense when we say that only once we have 800,000, then 56,000 of them join the formal market, and around 744,000 of them then join the informal market. But then the informal market, in terms of how it is contributing to the economy, no one really wants to look at that. And that's why every year we keep seeing the shrinking space of informal sector influence to the economy of this country, whereas indeed, in fact, almost 54% of Kenya's economy is reliant on agriculture, manufacturing, but much more fundamentally on the informal sector. So the question I believe that educationalists like Daktari here and so many of us should be asking is, what value are we adding, even as we seek to change the education system? And that is why you see, for instance, many people will get scared that if they get a D+ or a C+ or a C-, then you really want to find out what is your next alternative. So you want to, for instance, you said a lady has committed suicide, and we keep seeing this, but we don't see the actions that we take to encourage. There's so many number of people who therefore feel that they have not made it to university, so they feel that, okay, my future is done and I have nothing. And even the narrative that sometimes teachers say in class, you know, you must get an A. If you don't get an A, you will yield to nothing. What will your people think, you know? So what opportunities do we therefore expand? Yes, of course, we have vocational training centers or institutions. We have these technical institutions, but how much investment has the government put so that they also, you know, encourage and motivate the people who do not make it to university, so that they feel that even if I go to an ex-technical university, or I mean technical college, I will receive as much input from my lecturers, from the institution's capacity establishment, to also be able to be useful, not only for my people in my community, but also to the country at large. And that is why you see, for instance, today we are saying more than 28,000 counties did not get A's. And so the narrative would be that the people in that county are not, you know, cannot get A's, whereas it is really not the case, in my view. And like Daktari said, we need to look at data, because data many times do not lie. So I believe that the CS and the Ministry of Education and other stakeholders need to really sit back and watch in terms of what is this data telling us, and how can we be able to pick it up to move forward.
Dr. Kamau, one of the things, the proposals that is being given by Wilson Sossion, the Secretary General for NAT, is a recall of the examinations. And of course, that would have repercussions, both on the results possibly, and also the students. And again, it would probably have a ripple effect, even on the students joining, campus and all that. Your thoughts on whether that's a way to go?
Well, number one, I don't think that's the way to go, because a recall, and as Sossion has said, that these are the most disastrous results that we have seen. So a recall, of course, casts doubt on the process itself. That is the process of marking, and saying that perhaps if we have a recall and remark the results, we are likely to get a different outcome, which I don't think is necessarily the case. I know there was some noise last year, again, about results just around the same time. And again, Sossion also expressed himself on these, raising doubts about the process of marking and also the final outcome. Like I have said, and I think I saw a report by Ministry of Education trying to understand what is part of the challenge. For example, in these year's particular results, and I'm sure we'll get to know these a little bit more, and these are the reports that we'd want from the ministry. There are specific questions that students did not even attempt to answer. Is it that the instructions were not clear? Is it that the questions were too hard? And this is the report that I am saying, if the ministry would actually do its own audit of the process of the exams and the results, so that they can actually say, from our understanding, because the report that I saw previously just blamed Sheng, which we've always done. Traditionally, we tend to blame Sheng. But I think we may also want to look at are the instructions clear? Before you said that students did not understand the instructions, is it that the instructions were not clear? Is it that the exams were a bit too hard? Because the other thing is, we have to look at the students. The exams are not, are they telling us that the candidates maybe are not so bright, or is it that you actually tested them at a level that is slightly, above their ability to respond? So this would be the best way forward. Recalling the exams may not be the issue, but I think we also have to look at the bigger picture and the implications of this kind of performance at this particular point in time. Now, I've seen the analysis which shows that about half, that is almost 350,000 of the candidates scored D and below. And I think the interpretation by some people is that these people have no access to college and perhaps even jobs, because even the recruitment requires maybe a minimum grade of D+ for certain entry into jobs. And you have to think what this means. But secondly, and that is part of why I support the reforms and the new curriculum, we have doctors, we have preachers, we have politicians, we have teachers, we have engineers. We subject all of them to the same kind of an examination system. Somehow. And that is where an examination-based system it denies us an opportunity to actually see what are the unique abilities and gifts. And hopefully the new curriculum would address this particular issue, so that when you see students who score strongly in a particular area, because by the time somebody is in class 4, class 5, class 6, their strengths start coming out. And I think if we tried to build people around their area of strength, because their areas they will never shine. For example, I remember in high school, the young man who used to sit next to me was not performing so well. He was always last in class. But every time we went to the field, he was the fastest runner. He was playing soccer. He was actually the one shining in extracurricular activities.
And I think, and allow me to pause you there, because I want us to take a break. But when we come back, I think then we need to address the question of quality of education and also specialization, because one of the things that our education system does is concentrate a lot on academics, which is why you have...
And exams.
And that's why you have people committing suicide. Yet, I'm sure a girl like that, despite the fact that she had repeated and felt that she did not get the good results, she has a strength somewhere, but maybe was not explored. It's now 7:30. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express as we continue to review the week. And remember, your comments are welcome. And a quick reminder of that question as to whether a recall is the way to go for the examination. KCSE results according to Wilson Sossion. We'll take a break. Do stay with us.